Hey, Chris Liepe here for the Recording Revolution. Can a budget dynamic microphone hold its own and serve you well in your vocal recording sessions? Do you need to spend a lot of money so that your vocals don't sound bad? Well, not necessarily. In fact, no.
Bring the curtain down. I'm through with tonight. Even though you're gone, I'll be alright. 'Cause you're never too far away to join me for another day. Girl, you are my home. You are my home.
If you'd like more help dialing in the sound of your vocal recordings, click the link below and download my free vocal recording setup cheat sheet. I'll help you with all sorts of goodies, make sure that you've got your bases covered so that you can get into recording, maximize your performances, and do it without spending hours and hours trying to get the right sound. Let's make a budget microphone sound great. But first, and very importantly, a bit of perspective. Listen to this.
In my eyes, indisposed, in disguises no one knows.
Chris Cornell from Black Hole Sun. These are WAV files, so non-compressed from the original multitracks. Listen to how colored those vocals are.
In my eyes,
They're bright, they're really compressed, there's a lot of reverb. Listen to him later as he's doubling in the chorus.
black hole sun, won't you come?
Saturated and colored. Most rock vocal recordings, especially, the mixing engineer is squashing them and processing them way more than we think. And so, when we go to record our own vocals and get our own vocal sound, there's this mental block that happens with, oh, I can't possibly use that much compression or that much whatever it is. Follow me here. Perhaps you can relate to this process and discouragement. You start recording vocals after listening to lots of great sounding vocals, like what we just listened to. You don't really connect all the dots as to what makes that vocal sound so good. The vocal performance, the production behind it, and of course, the microphone. But you're not taking all this into consideration, really, even if you don't know you are. And you plug in the mic that you can afford, your budget microphone, and you get something like this.
I've been searching for so long for a microphone.
It's dry. It's through a Apogee Ensemble Thunderbolt into that preamp, leveled, but really nothing else is on it. And you think, well, okay, let's listen to it with the track. And it doesn't cut. It doesn't sound right. It gets lost in the mix. The louds are too loud. The quiets are too quiet. And of course, okay, well, I need to put some compression on there. I need to EQ it. Maybe. Actually, it just doesn't sound very good. I need to go get a nicer microphone. You get that nicer microphone and you do the same recording and you get this. And then you realize, because the dynamic range is greater on the more expensive microphone and it's more responsive, you actually have more trouble getting the condenser microphone to sit in the mix, and it doesn't sound, when you A-B them raw.
I've been searching for so long.
Doesn't actually sound that much better.
I've been searching for so long.
And then you go back to listening to something like this, very colored and, of course, professionally produced.
In my eyes, indisposed.
We all know how good that whole recording sounds. I spent the extra $3,000 after messing with the budget microphone and not being totally happy with what I was getting, and this one isn't really doing what I thought it would do. Well, it's time for you to come to the realization of why vocal performance, arranging, and production are going to help you get the sound you want way before the particular microphone you choose. Let's first start with plugins and effects. Let's dial those in a way that you may not have thought about previously. Oddly enough, we're going to start with the more expensive microphone, get that dialed in and sitting reasonably well, just the single performance for now. Then we're going to go to the SM57. We're going to use stock Pro Tools plugins with the exception of the Shep's Omni channel. And we're going to look at multi-stage compression and multi-stage EQ. In other words, we're going to use a lot of things a little bit. We're going to start by using this compressor.
I've been searching for so.
I'm going to put this first in my chain. I'm going to use a relatively steep knee, and I'm going to use a decent amount of compression up front. Look what's happening here.
I've been searching. I've been searching for so.
So,
I've been
12 dB of gain reduction. You know, not a lot, but not a little either. Then we're going to use a basic EQ. And we've notched out a couple frequencies here that make it sound less shrill.
I've been searching for
And less boxy, too.
I've been searching for so.
Takes out a bit of that room sound that you hear in the condenser, because my room isn't perfectly treated.
I've been searching for.
You're hearing that nice sizzly sound from the condenser microphone now. But here's the thing. That's where most people stop with their dynamic and EQ. They do as little as possible because, hey, I got a great sounding mic. Then they put it back in the mix.
I've been searching for so. For a microphone.
And it still doesn't cut it. Remember our example.
In my eyes.
How saturated that is. Listen to this again.
I've been searching for so.
There's way more dynamic range in my little version on the expensive microphone than there is on Cornell's sample, right? Enter a plugin like the Shep's Omni channel, which you can use any plugin for this, but this allows you to do many different things within one plugin, which is really nice. So I've introduced a good amount of saturation. This is a natural sounding distortion. So if we're going to A/B the whole plugin, and then I'll walk through what I've done here. But the main thing here is that I'm hitting multiple plugins. I'm hitting a compressor twice. I'm hitting an EQ twice. And then I am using saturation, which is another sort of form of compression. And then I'm hitting a limiter, which is another way of compressing and decreasing dynamic range. I'm doing all those things. So I'm doing essentially 4 stages of compression. And that sounds crazy, but a lot of times similar things are done to get that sound up front and working for you.
I've been searching for so.
Listen to that. Listen to this.
In my eyes.
We're getting closer. It sounds almost as colored. So we've got our saturation going on here.
I've been searching for so.
We've got our de-esser. We've got a bit of EQ. I'm boosting the highs. Quite a bit of compression again here.
I've been searching for so.
I've got my output cranked here at 7 dB. And I've got a limiter and I've got my input on the plugin cranked because this plugin, and a lot of plugins these days, you're able to hit them pretty hard. So we've added more saturation. Now we're going to add in a bit of reverb.
I've been searching for so.
So we've narrowed the gap with our expensive microphone by using multi-stage compression and EQ and adding some reverbs. Now we're going to tweak these basic settings and we're going to account for the fact that the dynamic microphone handles things differently. Same compression setting.
I've been searching for so long.
EQ setting.
I've been searching for so long.
Now we've goosed the high end here. It's not going to be the same kind of sparkle, but it's okay that it's not going to be the same. We can still work with it, and we can work with it also in arranging to help us bring out good qualities in this microphone. Then we go to the Sheps. I've done a couple things here to account for the lower quality in the 57. We're using about the same amount of saturation, but we're using an expander because a lot of times when you add this much compression, you get, if we don't use the expander here, you get this out of it. Lots of noise. As you're bringing that noise floor up, they don't operate nearly with the signal to noise ratio. So put an expander on it. Why not?
I've been searching.
Next, we're using two different de-essers instead of just one. One to get rid of some of the shrillness around 4600 hertz, and the other one is up there in the higher sibilance range. And we're boosting the overall highs a bit more here as well. Little bit different EQ, and then a lot of boost, just like we did on the other one. Adding in the reverb. Listen to our Cornell example here.
In my eyes, indisposed.
Listen here.
I've been searching for so long.
It's not exactly the same, but it doesn't need to be. There's some really neat things happening there. It's kind of a vintage sound. But we've dialed things in a way that takes advantage of what this thing does well. Less room noise. I don't have to notch as much when I'm compressing that much with my first EQ. I can actually drive it and take advantage of that saturation in a slightly different way. I can use an expander to get rid of that extra unwanted noise, which a lot of times you could argue you don't even need to do that because you could just selectively go in and remove parts of the file.
I've been searching. I've been searching for so long.
So now I'm going to do a bit of vocal arranging. I'm going to use both microphones. I'm going to add some doubles and some subtle harmonies. I'm going to place things in the mix, and I'm going to help the overall vocal performance sit in the mix really well. And I'm going to do it with both mics. Now, I'm going to do things sort of wrong on purpose. I'm going to sit down. I'm not going to use a popper stopper for either mic. I'm going to hold the 57, and I'm going to do this to prove that you don't need to have an ideal recording environment. You don't need to have everything lined up and be an exact certain distance from the microphone and, cross all your T's and dot all your I's for you to have a really good sounding vocal. You need to pay more attention to being comfortable, loose, and performing well. And if that's done, holding a microphone in the back of your studio like so many other people have done, like James Hetfield, or if you need to, like Chris Cornell, have the monitors blaring at you and sing in the control room, all of these things are fine. Don't get caught up on what's right. Do what's comfortable, do what's free. Enjoy the journey with me.
I've been searching. I've been searching for so long for a microphone. I've been searching. I've been searching for so long for a microphone. I've been searching. I've been searching for so long for a microphone. I've been searching. I've been searching for so long
Okay, so I did a bit of leveling, adjusted the high pass filters up on the background vocals. The lead vocal is tripled and panned out, not all the way, to give it some width. The doubles have a bit more of a high pass on them than the lead vocal, to give the outer edges a bit more presence and less mud. The harmonies are doubled and lower. I've increased the highs on those for a bit more definition, because they're also sung with a more subdued performance. And those screams, I've placed a little bit more drive on at the end, and also adjusted the high-pass filters as well. Let's A-B, the 57.
I've been searching for so long for a microphone.
MA300.
I've been searching for so long for a microphone in disguises no one knows.
The condenser microphone is definitely smoother and more spacious. It sounds great. But the SM57 has this gritty, vintage sort of sound that works well with this style and these layerings. And I realize there's a lot left unsaid and unexplored, and we're dealing with a style of music where a grittier mic works in a lot of ways. But I want you to hear this. Before you spend a lot of money on a microphone, work on your arranging ideas. Work on your layering. Work on your multi-stage compression. Realize that you have lots of power and flexibility within the digital domain using free or inexpensive plugins to put an inexpensive dynamic mic to work for you. And there are advantages. Less room noise to have to compensate for if you're in a room that isn't well treated. A bit more natural compression, as we saw in the initial demonstration. You don't have to do quite as much to it from a dynamics point of view because the mic just doesn't have as much dynamic range to begin with. And particularly when you start doubling, adding, and layering things, doing vocal arrangement and considering how the sum of all the vocals sit in the track, having an inexpensive mic or an expensive mic starts to make a little bit less of a difference because you're hearing a whole movement of vocals. So I hope you find freedom in your experimentation with your microphones. Again, if you'd like more help dialing in your vocal sound, click the link below and get my free PDF. This has been Chris for The Recording Revolution. We'll see you for more.